You were born into a world already in motion, a storm of expectations, norms, opinions inherited like a cursed crown. And before you even knew your name, someone had already decided what kind of life you were supposed to live. They told you to be kind, to follow the rules, to sit quietly while the strong devour the earth and leave you crumbs. You were taught to behave, to compromise, to aim for security instead of greatness. And somewhere in that process, something vital was stolen from you, something raw, untamed, and terrifying. Your power. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this theft for what it was, a quiet, systematic murder of the human spirit. And he didn't whisper it. He shouted it into the void. You are not strong enough. Not strong enough to face yourself. Not strong enough to break the chains you don't even see. Because real strength, true personal power, it's not found in titles or money or followers. It's found in the abyss, in the place where everything false is stripped away and only your essence remains. And most people, Nietzsche believed, would rather be comfortable slaves than face that abyss. We are taught to fear our own power, to package ourselves into palatable boxes, smile for the camera, keep the peace. But power, real power, doesn't smile. It doesn't ask permission. It burns. It creates. It destroys. And Nietzsche's most damning revelation is that the vast majority of people will never taste it. Not because they're incapable, but because they refuse the price. The price of truth. The price of responsibility. The price of becoming who you really are, not who the world expects you to be. We talk about empowerment today like it's a feel-good slogan. But Nietzsche would spit on that word as it's used now. Empowerment without suffering, without confrontation, without sacrifice, that's not empowerment, it's sedation. It's the soft lullaby sung by a dying culture trying to convince itself that mediocrity is noble. Nietzsche didn't want you to feel good. He wanted you to wake up, to feel the raw discomfort of your own smallness. Because only in that pain can transformation begin. He introduced the idea of the Übermensch not as some superhero, but as a vision of the human being who creates their own values, who becomes their own law, who breaks free from the morality of the herd and rises as something sovereign, dangerous, alive. But let's be honest, you're not there yet. Most people aren't. Because the truth is brutal. You are not strong enough to face your own darkness. You are not strong enough to live without lies. You are not strong enough to become what you could be. Not yet. Because becoming powerful demands a level of psychological violence most can't endure. It's not about conquering the world. It is about conquering yourself, and that is a war most people lose before it even starts. Look around. How many people do you know who live on fire? Who radiate conviction? Who move through the world with unapologetic intensity, not as a performance, but because they've burned away everything false? Rare, isn't it? Because society rewards obedience. It exiles those who refuse to kneel. The strong are not celebrated, they're crucified. Look at Socrates. Look at Jesus. Look at Nietzsche himself. Those who hold up a mirror to humanity's weakness are always punished for it, because nothing is more terrifying than the man or woman who doesn't need the world's approval. But here's the twist Nietzsche offers, sharp and unforgiving. If you are not willing to suffer the burden of becoming powerful, you will suffer the emptiness of remaining weak. You will live a safe, hollow life. You will smile and nod and pretend. You will post your curated self online and pray that someone validates it. But deep down, something in you will rot. Not because you failed, but because you never dared. This is not self-help. This is self-confrontation. This is the brutal mirror Nietzsche holds up to your face and says, are you ready to see who you really are? Not the costume, not the reputation, not the resume, the bones, the rage, the hunger, the parts of you that have been caged and drugged and civilized into submission. That's where your power lives, in the parts you're afraid to look at. And the first step? Admit it. Admit that you are not strong enough yet. Because denial is the first lie the weak cling to. Strength doesn't come from pretending. It comes from shattering the illusions that keep you tame. You have to earn your power. Through loss. Through isolation. Through the kind of inner warfare that breaks you down and builds something terrifying in its place, something unshakable. something sovereign. But that kind of transformation, it doesn't happen in daylight, it doesn't happen in public, it happens in silence, in the dead of night, when no one is watching and your masks have fallen away. That's when the real questions emerge. Who are you? Without your achievements, without your relationships, without your status? Strip it all away and ask yourself what remains. Most people spend their lives running from that question. They hide in routines, in noise, in distractions, because they suspect rightly that without the scaffolding, there's nothing underneath. Nietzsche calls that nihilism. The recognition that the things you once believed in morality, meaning, identity, are not as solid as you were told. The foundation cracks, the sky goes dark, and there's no savior coming. You begin to realize that the universe doesn't owe you understanding, that life is not fair, not balanced, not just. It simply is. And the weak respond to that with despair. But the strong take that void and create. This is the real test of power. Not control over others, not the ability to dominate, but the courage to confront the meaninglessness of existence and still choose to rise, to craft meaning like fire in the dark, to become a creator of values, not a follower. That's the crucible Nietzsche speaks of, where the herd perishes and the Übermensch is born. But here's the reality no one wants to admit. The herd feels good. There's comfort in belonging. There's ease in conformity. There's a twisted safety in never questioning the script you were handed. Because if you start to ask why, you might discover there's no real answer. And that level of freedom? It's too heavy for most. They'd rather remain caged than bear the weight of responsibility for their own existence. Nietzsche believed that the strongest among us are those who can live without illusions, who can stare into the abyss and not flinch, who can carry their suffering not as a curse but as raw material for greatness. Because suffering, deep suffering, is not the enemy. It's the forge. The more you feel, the more you can feel. The more pain you endure, the deeper your potential. That's the paradox. Weakness avoids pain. Strength transforms it. Strength. But again, not all pain is equal. There is a kind of suffering that breaks people, makes them bitter, turns them into shells. And then there is the suffering that refines, that carves, that purifies. This is not about romanticizing trauma. It's about choosing to meet your pain with power, to say, yes, I hurt, but I will use this. I will build with this. Most will never do that. They will medicate, distract, blame, and rot in quiet resentment for a life they were too afraid to shape. You must understand, personal power is not a gift. It is not granted. It is taken, seized, wrestled from the jaws of your own fear. And it always comes with a price. You will lose people. You will lose comfort. You will lose the luxury of being liked. Because those who walk this path become mirrors, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. They show others what they could have been and didn't dare to become. So if you want to be powerful, you have to ask yourself a brutal question. Are you willing to be hated? Are you willing to walk alone? Are you willing to destroy your former self, the one who lived for approval, and emerge as something untamed, something real? If not, then you don't want power. You want permission. And those who wait for permission will die waiting. We live in an age that rewards performance over substance, influence without integrity, visibility without vision. Everyone wants to appear powerful. No one wants to be broken down to the bone and rebuilt. Because real power can't be faked. It radiates. It's in the eyes, in the voice, in the posture of someone who has walked through hell and no longer fears the fire. And when you meet someone like that, you know, there's no pretending. Nietzsche's words are a call to arms, not a comfort. He doesn't offer peace, he offers war. A war against mediocrity, against cowardice, against the inner voice that whispers, stay safe, stay small. And if you are listening carefully, maybe you've started to feel it, that quiet rebellion rising inside you, the part of you that's tired of bowing, tired of asking, tired of being less than what you know you could become. That's the seed, the beginning, the moment when you stop waiting and start forging, when you realize that the life you've been sold is not the life you must live. But that realization is just the doorway. The path beyond it, It's violent, it's sacred, and it will demand everything. There is a moment, somewhere along the path of awakening, when the old self begins to scream. Not with words, but with fear. It feels the walls closing in. It senses its death approaching. And it will do anything to survive, lie, rationalize, sabotage. That's the inner war Nietzsche spoke of, not a battle against the world, but a battle against the parts of you that have learned to live without truth. The small self, the obedient self, the self built on survival, not sovereignty. Killing that self feels like murder. Because it is. But it's a necessary one. The death of the false must precede the birth of the real. The you that was designed by teachers, parents, religions, institutions, that version has to burn, and you will mourn it. You will grieve the comfort it gave you. But if you do not light the match, life will do it for you through crisis, collapse, betrayal. That's the great irony. You either die consciously or you die unconsciously. But either way, you must die to be reborn. Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Chaos is not failure. Chaos is potential. It is the raw material of greatness. But most are too terrified to touch it. They organize their lives to avoid chaos, to suppress it, to bury it beneath productivity and performance. But what they're really burying is their own becoming. Because nothing great is born from balance, the storm is the source. And what of morality, of virtue, the good citizen, the polite soul, the smiling face in the crowd? Surely that's what strength looks like, right? Nietzsche laughs at this illusion. Because most morality, he argues, is not born from strength, it's born from weakness. A slave morality. A system designed by the powerless to protect themselves from the powerful. Turn the other cheek. Judge not. Be humble. These are not divine principles, they're defense mechanisms. Strategies for survival in a world that once belonged to lions, not lambs. But Nietzsche doesn't glorify cruelty. That's the mistake of shallow readers. He doesn't ask you to dominate others, he asks you to dominate yourself. To transcend your own cowardice. To refuse the morality of the herd, not so you can harm others, but so you can stop harming yourself. To live with such honesty, such internal coherence that your life becomes its own standard, not superior sovereign. And this is why Nietzsche is feared. Because his philosophy leaves you with no one to blame. No God, no system, no fate, no family. The only person left is you. Your weakness, your avoidance, your refusal. And if you are not strong enough to confront that, you will hate him. You will call him dangerous, toxic, mad. Because he dares to say what few have the stomach to hear. You are responsible for what you become. Entirely. No excuses, no mercy. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. Because in that radical responsibility lies radical freedom. When you stop waiting for permission, you become the architect of your own soul. You stop asking, what should I do, and begin asking, what must I become? That question is not safe. It will take you to the edge of your sanity. Because becoming what you're meant to be means destroying what you were told to be. And that process? It's not poetic. It's savage. You will lose friends. Not because they're bad people, but because your transformation will unsettle them. They will say you've changed, that you're too intense, too cold, too different. And they'll be right. Because the version of you that needed their validation is dead, and the version standing in its place doesn't flinch, doesn't shrink, doesn't apologize for the fire that now lives in their chest. And what happens next? After the burn? After the isolation? After the long, silent nights where your only companion is the echo of your own soul? You begin to see. Not with your eyes, but with your essence. You see how deeply the world sleeps. How addicted people are to their illusions. You see the lies that shape culture, the games people play, the masks they wear, and you no longer want to play. Not out of arrogance, but out of reverence for what you've become. That's when you begin to move differently. You speak less, listen more. You watch the world with a quiet knowing, not to judge, but because you've been to the underworld and returned. You know what it costs to be free. And you know most people aren't ready to pay it. So you walk with your back straight, your eyes forward, not as a warrior marching to war, but as a creator, carving a path where there was none, not above others, beyond them, beyond the need to prove, beyond the urge to perform. You are no longer trying to become someone. You are someone. And that is the difference between strength and spectacle, between fire and smoke. But here is the final, unforgiving truth. Even now, most will turn back. Even with all the fire, all the clarity, all the hunger rising in their gut, they'll go home. They'll scroll. They'll numb themselves. They'll say, maybe tomorrow. Because the path of personal power isn't just hard, it is unnatural to the conditioned mind. You've been trained from birth to doubt your instincts, to outsource your morality, to flatten your soul until it fits into polite society's mold. So even the idea of standing alone, unguarded, unfiltered, unrelenting, feels like death. And it is. But what dies is what never truly lived. You must understand, power in the Nietzschean sense is not an outcome. It is not a prize you hold or a stage you reach. It is a process, a living engine that consumes everything false and leaves behind only what is real. It is the willingness to bleed in service of your own becoming, to burn away the parts of yourself that were designed to survive instead of thrive. It is war, sacred war, fought on the battlefield of your own psyche. And there's no applause for this war, no medals, no audience, just you, stripped bare, standing in the ashes of who you used to be. And that's when it happens, not all at once, but gradually, like the first light after a long winter. Something stirs, a presence, a calmness, a silent power that doesn't need to explain itself, that doesn't react, that doesn't need affirmation. It simply is, like a mountain, like a storm, like the truth. That is the birth of sovereignty. You don't beg, you don't perform, you don't hide. You own. You own your mind, your choices, your scars, your hunger. You don't wait to be chosen, you choose yourself. Again, and again, and again, until there's no longer a version of you that can be tamed. This is what Nietzsche called becoming who you are. Not finding yourself, but forging yourself, tempered by fire, sharpened by solitude, informed not by society's values, but by your own inner law, a law written in blood, sweat, and brutal honesty. This is the moment where power no longer looks like dominance, but presence, no longer a mask, but a mirror, and it comes with silence. Real power doesn't announce itself. It walks into a room and shifts the temperature. It speaks and people listen, not because it demands attention, but because it commands it through presence alone, through the stillness that only comes from knowing exactly who you are and no longer needing anyone to agree. You will feel it in your bones, not as confidence, but as inevitability, as truth so deeply woven into your being that even your breath feels different, calmer, stronger. Your gaze becomes clean, without hunger. Your energy no longer leaks. You are not driven by anger anymore, or approval, or fear. You move because it is time to move. You stop because it is time to stop. Nothing else controls you. And yet, even here at the height of your power, Nietzsche whispers a final warning. Do not become what you once despised. The one who becomes strong must remember where they came from, must remember the dark, the doubt, the crawling nights of loneliness. Because true strength doesn't isolate, it illuminates. It doesn't dominate, it inspires. The real Übermensch is not a tyrant, but a creator, a force of nature that makes others remember what they are capable of. That's the paradox, that once you no longer need others, you finally have something of value to offer them. Not answers, but example. Not salvation, but reflection. You become a living invitation. This is what it looks like to walk without chains. And those who are ready, really ready, will follow. Not to become like you, but to become like themselves. And that is how the world changes, one awakened soul at a time. But the rest? They will call you cold, arrogant, ruthless. And maybe you are, because you had to be. Because you looked the world in the eye and didn't blink. Because you chose the truth over comfort, the path over the crowd, and the fire over the fog. And for that, yes, they will fear you. Let them. You are not here to be liked. You are here to become. You are here to live wildly, truthfully, dangerously, to dig your hands into the dirt of your own psyche and pull something magnificent from the wreckage, something brutal, something holy, something entirely your own. And in the end, if there is a final message Nietzsche leaves us, carved in the bones of his writing and the madness of his brilliance, it is this: the world will never give you your power. You must take it, with bare hands, with bloodied soul, with eyes wide open, and when you do not, everyone will understand. But you will, and you will never go back.